This video is based on real events. There are pains that don't scream. They hide. They seep into your body like a slow, silent poison, something no one can see, but that changes everything inside. I lived with one of those pains for more than a decade, a pain that didn't show up in tests, didn't leave a visible scar, but lived deep in my throat, tightening every time I heard male footsteps behind me. Today, I'm 40 years old. I have a life that, from the outside, looks ordinary. Work, friends, bills to pay, adult responsibilities. But inside me, the little girl still lives, the one who learned way too early that a home isn't always a shelter. Sometimes it's a trap. My name is Helena. It's not the name my parents gave me. It's the name I chose for myself, after everything. The name that let me keep existing when the old one felt too heavy with pain. If you're watching this video, maybe you're here out of curiosity. Maybe someone sent it to you. Or maybe, somehow, something in the title pulled you in. Before we continue, I want to ask you something simple. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And if stories like this still need to be told, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Not for me. For the people who are still silent. Because what I'm about to share, a lot of people would rather pretend it doesn't exist. I was born in 1985 in a small countryside town, one of those places where everyone knows everyone, or at least thinks they do. Cobblestone streets, a church in the main square, Sunday mass, and afternoon gossip on the sidewalks. My house was at the end of a narrow street, painted a dull beige, with an iron gate that squeaked when it opened. From the outside, it looked like a normal home. On the inside, that's where life happened in ways no one saw. My father was a civil servant, a serious man, respected, known as hardworking and honest. My mother was a seamstress. She made clothes for half the town. Always busy, always tired, always somewhere else in her mind. In front of other people, we were the perfect family, responsible father, dedicated mother, well-behaved daughter. But the truth is, some families are only perfect when there's an audience. Up until I was 7, I believed my childhood was normal. I played in the street, went to school, scraped my knees, got scolded, said sorry. My father was strict, but back then that seemed normal. My mother was distant, but I thought it was just exhaustion. Everything changed the day I understood that some doors, when they close, don't protect, they hide. I was 8 years old when it happened for the first time. There was no sad music, no warning, no movie scene. It was ordinary, every day, part of the routine. My mother had gone out to deliver clothes. My father was home. I was in my room, drawing on the floor. "Helena, come here." His voice was calm, and that was what scared me the most. In the kitchen, he complained that I'd left crumbs on the table, said I was careless, said a girl like that needed to learn. I didn't understand what was happening until it was too late. I won't describe the details, not because I don't remember, but because some things don't need to be repeated to be true. I'll only say this: the man who should have protected me crossed a line that should never, ever be crossed. And that day, something inside me broke forever. Afterwards, he told me not to tell anyone. He said no one would believe me. He said I would destroy our family. I was 8, and I believed every word. That night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, I thought I had done something wrong. Kids always think that. They think it's their fault, that they caused it, that they deserved it. The next day, life kept going. School, lunch, homework. And I understood it hadn't been an accident. It had been a warning. The abuse continued, not every day, and that made it worse because I never knew when it would happen. Fear became permanent. My body lived on high alert. My mother started to notice something was wrong. I was too quiet, too jumpy, too sad. One time, she asked if I was sick. I almost told her. Almost. But fear was bigger. Fear of what my father would do. Fear of no one believing me. Fear of making everything worse. And deep down, a fear that was even crueler. What if she knew and chose to do nothing? That fear became real sooner than I expected. I was 9 years old when my mother walked into my room without knocking. I was crying, sitting on the bed, hugging a pillow. She looked at me, long enough to know something was wrong, but she didn't ask anything. She just said, "Stop being dramatic. Your father doesn't like that." In that moment, I understood I was alone. My father wasn't just an abuser. He was a man, protected by the silence of an entire house. And my mother chose the easier side, the side that didn't require courage. At school, I became the weird girl, the one who didn't play, the one who flinched at any touch, the one who never raised her hand. My grades dropped. Teachers called my mother in. She said I was too sensitive, that I made things up. And that's how the story was built. Helena exaggerates. Helena is dramatic. Helena lies. When you get that label early, you start doubting even your own pain. That's when I learned how to leave my body. When it happened, I shut down. I stared at the ceiling, counted the tiles, pretended I was somewhere else. It was the only way to survive. Years passed. 10, 11, 12. My body started to change, and the fear got worse. The threats became more direct. The rules became tighter. My mother started controlling my schedule, my clothes, my movements, not to protect me, but to protect the appearance of normal. I couldn't visit friends. I couldn't be alone outside the house. I couldn't talk too much. Everything was about preventing questions. I was a secret that had to be kept locked away. The first person who truly saw me was a teacher. I don't remember her name today, but I remember her eyes. Eyes that didn't judge, didn't accuse. They asked without words. One day after class, she called me aside, asked if everything was okay at home. I said yes, like always. But my body said no. The tears came before the courage. She didn't push me. She just said, "If you ever want to talk, I'm here." Sometimes, one sentence like that is enough to keep someone alive, but I still wasn't ready. I went back home, back to silence, back to fear. And there, in that suffocating place, I realized something terrifying. Abuse doesn't live alone. It feeds on omission, on fear, on convenience. As long as no one spoke, it would continue. I was 13 when I thought about running away. I packed a backpack in secret, a few clothes, a notebook, a torn photo, but I couldn't leave. The door was locked. That night, I sat on the kitchen floor, hugging my knees, and I cried in silence. Not from physical pain, but from the certainty that no one was coming to save me. And this is where I need you to pay attention, because a lot of kids are living exactly this right now. At this exact moment, trapped in houses that look normal, with respected adults, with mothers who pretend they don't see. Abuse doesn't look like a movie, it looks like routine. And as long as we pretend it doesn't exist, it will keep existing. But something started to change inside me. It wasn't courage yet, it was anger, a quiet anger, that grew every day, every night. And it was that anger that kept me alive until the day I decided to speak. Anger is a strange thing. It can destroy, but it can also save. For a long time, all I felt was fear. Fear of what could happen. Fear of what had already happened. Fear of not surviving. But when the anger arrived, something shifted. It didn't come in explosions. It came in silence, tight in my chest, like a knot that wouldn't loosen. I was 13 when I realized that if nothing changed, I wouldn't make it into adulthood whole. Not whole on the inside. My body was there, growing up. But my mind was trapped in the past, replaying scenes I was trying to forget. I started having constant nightmares. I'd wake up in the middle of the night with my heart racing, my mouth dry, my body drenched in sweat. Sometimes I screamed. Sometimes I froze, staring into the dark. My mother said I was being dramatic, that I needed to be strong, that weak girls don't get far. But she wasn't saying that for me. She was saying it to herself. The more time passed, the clearer it became. She had made a choice, and it hadn't been mine. At school, I isolated myself even more. I sat in the back of the classroom, avoided eye contact, didn't participate in anything. The other girls talked about crushes, parties, dreams. I only thought about surviving the next day. My body reacted before my mind did. Any male presence too close made me tense. Any firmer voice made me shrink. The teachers noticed, but no one asked the hard questions. Asking takes effort. Believing comes with responsibility. And responsibility is something a lot of people avoid. That's when that teacher came back into my mind. The same one who had said, "If you ever want to talk, I'm here." I thought about her when things became unbearable. I wondered if she was still there, if she would still believe me. But I always backed down. Fear still spoke louder, until the day something happened, and I understood I couldn't stay silent anymore. My mother had started working more outside the house, sewing jobs, alterations, orders. She came home late, tired, impatient. My father took advantage of those moments. That specific night, I remember the smell of the house, the smell of cold food, the smell of things that were never resolved. After it was over, I sat on the bedroom floor for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I was empty. And that was when I thought for the first time about disappearing, not running away, disappearing for real. I imagined what it would be like to never feel anything again. No body, no memory, but something inside me refused. It wasn't hope. It was outrage. Why should I disappear if I hadn't done anything wrong? Why should I pay with my life for crimes that weren't mine? That question changed everything. The next day, I went to school different, not lighter, but decided. That teacher was there. I saw her in the hallway, carrying books. My heart started pounding. My hands got sweaty. I walked past her, then turned back, walked past again, until she saw me. "Helena!" she called. Hearing my name in someone's voice that didn't yell, didn't threaten, didn't demand, that alone almost broke me. She knew immediately something was wrong. She took me to an empty room. "Do you want to talk now?" she asked. I did. But I also wanted to run. I sat down, stared at the floor. The silence lasted minutes. It felt like hours, until I spoke. Not in detail, not all at once, but enough. "My dad hurts me." She didn't interrupt me. She didn't ask if I was sure. She didn't doubt me. She took a deep breath and said something I will never forget. "I believe you. 3 words, that's it. But in that moment, it was like someone opened a window in a room that had been sealed shut for years. She explained that what was happening was serious, that it wasn't my fault, that it wasn't normal. Deep down, I already knew, but hearing it from an adult changed everything. She asked if I wanted help. I did, but I was scared. I told her about my mother, about the silence, about the complicity. Her face went serious, really serious. Helena, she said, what's happening to you is a crime, and it has to stop. A crime. Until then, I thought it was some kind of personal punishment, something specifically about me. Realizing it had a name, that the law recognized it, changed the way I saw everything. But it also brought a new fear. What if no one did anything? She explained we would need evidence, that it wouldn't be simple, that a lot of reports die halfway through. And she was honest with me. The process would be hard, painful, risky. She asked if I was willing. I thought about what I had lived, about what I would still live if I stayed quiet. I am, I said. And in that moment, I started becoming more than just a victim. The plan was dangerous. I'm not going to romanticize it. It meant holding on a little longer. It meant documenting what was happening. It meant trusting adults after everything. But it also meant a chance at freedom. For days, I lived on autopilot, pretending everything was normal. Every gesture calculated, every word measured. Inside, I was shaking. The teacher spoke to people outside the school, people who understood this, people who could act. I didn't know who they were. I only knew something was moving, and that gave me strength. At home, my mother started to suspect something. I don't know how. Maybe instinct, maybe fear. She asked if I was hiding something, told me not to create problems. You know what happens to people who talk too much, she said. I did. But this time, something was different. I wasn't completely alone anymore. That night, after everything, I didn't cry. I didn't fold into myself. I knew it was the last time, and that certainty changed everything. The next day, I went to school like we planned. I brought what I needed. When I handed it to the teacher, I watched her face change, not with surprise, with confirmation. Now it's on me, she said. The rest of that day moved in slow motion. Every minute felt like an eternity. I went back home with my heart in my throat. My mother was acting strange. My father was restless. Something in the air had changed, and it really had. It was early evening when they knocked on the door. It wasn't a normal knock. It was firm, certain. My father went to answer, irritated. I heard voices. I saw shadows moving. My body froze. Someone called my name. I opened my bedroom door with shaking hands. On the other side was a woman I'd never seen before, speaking with a calm I didn't even know existed. Helena, we're here to protect you. Behind her, people in uniform. My father started yelling. My mother was crying, but no one looked at them. They were all looking at me for the first time. I left that house with a small backpack. There wasn't much to take. At the door, my mother tried to say something. I didn't listen. I didn't want to listen. The car pulled away, and I watched that house get smaller through the rear window. I didn't feel sadness. I felt relief. A relief so big, it hurt. What came next wasn't easy. Exams, statements, having to repeat my story to strangers. But every time I spoke, the guilt got a little smaller. Because no one said it was mine. They said I had been brave, and that was new. My father was arrested. My mother was investigated. Justice, slow as always, started to move. I went to a temporary place, safe, strange, but safe. For the first time in years, I slept without locking the door. But freedom doesn't erase the past. It only allows you to start healing it. And that's where my real fight began. Freedom doesn't show up throwing a party. It arrives strange, quiet, almost uncomfortable. In the first days away from that house, I couldn't relax. My body stayed on alert. Like at any moment, someone would walk into the room and say it had all been a mistake, that I had to go back. I slept badly, woke up several times a night. Any noise made me jump out of bed. And still, there was something new. It wasn't happiness. It was safety. I was in a temporary shelter with other girls, each one carrying her own story, her own pain. We didn't talk much at first. Trauma teaches you to distrust, but one look was enough to know none of us were there by accident. During the day, I had to repeat my story to psychologists, social workers, police officers. At first, every word felt like it was being ripped out of me. Then something changed. The more I spoke, the more the shame faded. And I realized something important. The shame was never mine. It had only been living inside me because it had nowhere else to go. My mother tried to see me. She sent messages. She cried. She said she was sorry. I didn't want to meet her, not because I was strong enough, but because I was still fragile. I learned early that forgiveness isn't an obligation, and contact isn't healing. The case against my father moved forward, slow, full of obstacles, like everything in the system. He denied everything, said I was making it up, said I was rebellious, said I had been influenced. It was terrifying to see how the word of an adult man still carried more weight than the pain of a child. But now I had something I'd never had before: support. The teacher who believed me stayed present, not as a hero, but as someone who didn't look away. She visited me, she called me, she asked how I was doing, and she was the one who explained something that changed how I saw the world. Helena, most abusers aren't discovered because there's no evidence. They're discovered when someone decides to listen. Listening takes courage, and courage, unfortunately, is still rare. I started therapy. At first, I hated it. Talking hurt, remembering hurt, feeling hurt, but staying silent hurt more. The psychologist taught me something simple and revolutionary. My body wasn't guilty for trying to survive. The reactions, the fears, the shutdowns, all of it had been a defense strategy. I wasn't weak. I had been resilient. That idea took time to sink in. Years of guilt don't disappear in a few weeks, but little by little, I started to believe it. The trial came months later. I didn't have to be in the same room as him. My testimony was recorded beforehand. I cried. I shook, but I spoke. And that was enough. When the sentence came, I didn't feel joy or revenge. I felt closure. My father was convicted, not for the amount of time I deserved, but for the amount of time the law allowed. My mother was held accountable too, not as a victim, but as an accomplice through omission. That mattered, because silence hurts too, and it needs consequences. After the legal process, the question came, the one nobody really knows how to answer. And now I had to learn how to live, not survive, live. I was taken in by a temporary family, ordinary people, with flaws, but without violence. At first, I asked permission for everything: to eat, to leave my room, to take a shower. They thought it was strange, but they were patient. The first time I dropped a plate and no one yelled, I cried for hours. It wasn't about the plate. It was the discovery that mistakes didn't have to mean punishment. I went back to school. The town knew. Some people looked at me with pity, others with suspicion. Some said I had destroyed a family. Those words hurt, but they didn't silence me. I learned early that there will always be people who defend the abuser, as long as it isn't their own child. I kept studying, graduating, dreaming. It took time for me to truly dream. In the beginning, the dreams were small: sleep through the night, get through one day without fear. Then they grew. I wanted to help other children. I wanted no one to have to go through what I went through. Teenage years were hard. Relationships? Don't even get me started. My body still confused touch with danger. My mind took a long time to understand that not every man was a threat. But with time, support, and therapy, I started learning again. I learned to say no. I learned to say yes. I learned that consent is essential and that love doesn't hurt. Years passed. I graduated. I worked. I built a life. Little by little, that terrified girl started to feel farther away. Not forgotten, but integrated. She still lives inside me. She just doesn't run the show anymore. Today, at 40, I look back with a mix of pain and pride. Pain for what I lived. Pride for not giving up, because I could have given up. Many do. And that's what scares me the most. That's why I'm telling this story. Not to expose wounds, but to turn on warning lights. Abuse rarely starts with obvious violence. It starts with silence, with control, with fear. And it ends, far too often, in interrupted lives. If you're an adult who's around children, pay attention, ask, believe. If you are a victim, know this: it's not too late. It's never too late. There is help. There is a way out. But the first step is breaking the silence. After so many years in silence, it felt impossible that anything could ever give me my voice back. But it was the pain that, little by little, turned that voice into something stronger, something I could no longer ignore. At 18, after finishing high school, I decided I was going to become a lawyer. I had one goal: to fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves. I wanted to represent children who, like me, were trapped in the shadows of violence. I wanted to be the voice for those who couldn't speak. I still remember the first time I walked into law school. It was a huge building, packed with people. Me, someone who had been invisible throughout my childhood, was suddenly there, surrounded by future lawyers, wanting to be one of the few who would use that knowledge to do good. Back then, I still carried the weight of what I'd lived through. It wasn't a distant memory. There were still echoes of the nights I couldn't sleep, of wounds time hadn't healed. But something in me was changing. I wasn't trying to hide from the world anymore. I was learning how to face it differently. I started an internship at a small office, at first doing administrative tasks, just to learn how the legal world worked. But deep down, I knew that wasn't enough for me. I wanted more. I needed more. It was in my final year of college that things started to take shape. That's when I met Paulo, a journalism student who also carried a painful past. He had his own hard stories, but what impressed me most was how he dealt with pain, how he dealt with life. He didn't hide. He didn't use pain as a shield, but as strength. We fell in love quickly. I had learned to flinch at any touch, to doubt everything. But with him, it was different. His respect for me, for my story, made all the difference. He was patient. He gave me time. He never pushed. At first, I thought that if I truly let myself trust him, he could destroy me the same way my father had. But with time, I learned something. Real love doesn't destroy. It heals. At 24, already graduated, I was in the middle of a process that would change my life forever. That's when I decided to start working on child abuse cases. And that was only the beginning. Adult life has its complications, but it also brought opportunities. I started to be recognized in my field, not because of my story, but because of hard work, because of dedication. Every abuse case I won, every child I helped, gave me strength to keep going. But as everyone knows, the road isn't easy. The barriers are still there, the judgments, the prejudice, the criticism. And over time, I realized something. The real battle isn't against other people. It's against silence. It's against the idea that abuse is a private problem. It's against the idea that we shouldn't talk about it. I became a lawyer because I knew that somewhere out there, someone was living what I had lived. And I wanted to be the person who would open the door for them to escape. I wanted to be the voice for those who couldn't speak. And somehow, my work, my dedication, my effort, it also helped heal the little girl still living inside me. But what truly transformed me was the moment I decided to tell my story. After working with so many victims, after seeing so many stories that looked like mine, I realized the only way to truly change people's mindset was to speak openly about what I had lived through, to expose what was happening inside those perfect homes people admired from the outside, but that were full of pain. In 2015, I decided to write a book about my life, what I went through, what I learned. I knew that book could change something in someone's life. I knew it could save someone, and that's how I started speaking. First, in a small circle, friends, the people who supported me. Then, in a talk for a support group for victims. And finally, in schools and universities. The response was unbelievable. People I never expected, people hiding inside the same pain, started coming forward. They started saying, "Me too." They started realizing they weren't alone. Those moments of sharing were healing. Every tear that fell during my talks, every hand that squeezed mine afterward, made me realize my pain hadn't been for nothing. It turned into strength. It turned into help. I already knew justice had been done. But what truly gave me peace was knowing that by telling my story, I was doing something bigger. I was breaking a cycle. I was helping give a voice to those who didn't have one. Today, I'm married to Paulo. We have 2 children, Antonio and Luisa. They don't know everything about what happened. I tell them with time, as they grow and can understand. But I give them something I never had: love, safety, respect. I give them the chance to be kids, to live without fear. It's incredible how life can give you opportunities to heal, to rebuild. I spent years trying to understand what had happened to me, trying to understand how a child could be treated that way. But with time, I realized the most important thing wasn't understanding the past. It was living the future. It was giving purpose to everything I lived through. My work today, my voice, my story, everything I do has one purpose: to help destroy the silence that still traps so many children and women. The silence that keeps abuse invisible, that makes victims feel guilty, that makes them hide in the dark, afraid to speak. I'm not the girl who stayed silent anymore. I'm the woman who chose to speak, chose to fight. And my fight isn't just mine. It belongs to everyone who, like me, once believed silence was the only option. And I want you to know this. If you're watching this and you recognized yourself in any part of my story, you are not alone. And believe me, there is a way out. You deserve to be heard. You deserve to be seen. And more than anything, you deserve to heal. If you feel like it's time to speak, please know it's okay to seek help. There are people willing to support you, to listen to you. I know that, because I'm one of them. If you liked this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. Share it with someone who needs to hear this, because the fight against silence needs more voices. And your voice, my friend, could be the next one to break the cycle. I'm Helena, and this is my story, and it doesn't end here.